So you and I find ourselves online, each other online. We hang out a little bit, first by some messaging. I like you, you like me. I post a picture of myself that was when I was 20. By you being a bit more honest, you post a picture of you as you are. And me and you kind of meet at some cafe, and you see me as being a little hunched, having no hair, wrinkled, and all that. You say, oh, this is Amir? Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't have any other pictures. And there is something about us human beings where you rely on your five senses, and they find what is attractive, what is pleasurable. You look at me, and you realize that there is nothing about me that is attractive, at least on the surface. But you've been raised well, you're polite, you have a good amount of self-respect, so instead of coming out and saying, slapping me and walking away, you say, okay, you can buy me, some coffee and some pastries, and we'll sit and talk. And as we talk, you realize that you're no longer looking at my face, or maybe you are, but something about the way I am allows you to overlook, all of my flaws. And after many dates, you say, or I say, Sybil, let's get married. And you say, yeah, it's great, let's do it. And your dreams are slowly coming true. And we get married, we go to Hawaii, and 10 minutes later, you say, Amir, I think I'm pregnant. I think it's great. And we're both excited, you just a bit more, because it was your body who screamed. And I just said, okay. Then comes the 5th or the 6th month, or maybe even a bit earlier. Your brain chemistry, body chemistry has changed a little, or maybe a lot. I come and I say, hey, honey, how are you doing? Don't talk to me. Okay. A pleasant dream is turning into a nightmare of sorts. And you catch yourself saying, what is wrong with you? You just came home, you just asked, how are you doing? Just say, I'm fine, thank you. Is there food to eat? Yeah, in the kitchen, go cook for yourself. Okay. You can't sleep. You're irritable all the time. You're exhausted all the time, and rightly so. And then after being tormented, disturbed, bothered by this unborn child, at a certain point while you're watching a movie, you say, I think my water broke. So, God, it's midnight. I don't want to go to Kaiser, but I have no choice. We go there. And you push and you pull and you push and you pull and you push and you pull, and this thing comes out. And you love. It's the easiest thing any mother can do. Something comes out of you and you love it. I mean, babies, I mean. Sorry about that. Now, prior to being married and prior to having children, you spend so much of your time reading and thinking and engage in, say, high-powered conversations. And now it's just diapers and pooping and rashes, and waking up in the middle of the night and nursing this kid, and having a husband as me being a complete idiot. But you're very much aware of time. You're very much aware of old age and sickness and all that. That you look at yourself and you say, my parents had me, and they did all the stuff. They're now all sitting somewhere. I'm just living my life. Is this what happens to all parents? That they give their life to a kid, the kid gets to a certain age, and they leave. And the parents are left behind, completely exhausted and drained. And you say, is this the way I want to spend my time? Because all kids eventually will be ungrateful. Whether or not they come back and show gratitude, that's a different story. And you put your kid down for a nap, and you say, thank God, after 2 months, now I can sit and read a good book. And let's just say you go to the library, your library, and you grab Dialogues of Plato off of the shelf or the Bible. You say, good, now I can read one of the Gospels. And the moment you open the Bible, you hear something. It's your child crying. And you usually don't use any foul language. But this time, you say, really? I just want a moment of peace. That's all I want. Is that too much to ask? And you raise your hand, raise your head to the heavens. And as you go to nurse your child, you do so with a good amount of resentment. She robbed you of your time. She robbed you of your passion. She robbed you of yourself. And as you nurse this kid with a good amount of resentment, you also come to realize that she's just an infant. She's weak. She came here because of you and me. She had no hand to play. You should be a bit more mature. Be motherly. Be the way that your mom was with you. Just surrender, accept. But as you give more of yourself to your child, there is less of you that's there. And the kid turns to be like 4 or 5. Now you have a different kind of issue. You look around you and you realize for the first time, you realize you're a social and political animal. Your child, whom you have nursed and taken care of for the past 5 or 6 years, is now going to enter society. What school? Public school? Private school? What kind of friends? What kind of movies can we watch? What kind of friendships can we have? And you realize that most of your brain space is now occupied by taking care of this kid, so that nothing on the outside or the inside can get broken by society. There is even less of you that's left for you. And as you go to various functions to figure out what to do with your child's future, and as you and I talk, you do everything with a good amount of resentment, because this is not the life that you chose for yourself. Your body demanded the baby, you gave it to it. Now your child, and you love the kid. That's how things are. You spend most of your time trying to figure out, it's like a chess game. Where should you place your child so he doesn't get checked? Far worse, checkmated, because it's going to impact you. And then there comes a point where forgetfulness sets in. Let's say your child is like 6 or 7 or 8. You're no longer a helicopter parent hovering over him or her to figure out if they're going the right places, good places, right friends. And I come to you and say, listen, I have a brother and I have a sister. I can't imagine life without having a sibling. We need to have another child, not because you and I love kids, but because our kid needs a sibling, needs a friend. Life is a long journey. Friendships, they don't have much shelf life. And these is perhaps not even siblings, but that's besides the point. Let's have another one. And like the TV, you and I wrestle a little bit, eventually you say, okay. You're now 45 or 50, and you've spent the last 20, 25 years of your life taking care of other people, and you've forgotten about yourself. And the only reason you can really think about having the second child is you forget the difficulties of having the first one, and you forget the difficulties of raising the first one. That's one of the benefits or curses of being a forgetful animal. Despite the horror show for 10 years, you're willing to do it again, you see. For about 20 years, you've resented nursing, taking care of your kids, taking care of your husband, taking care of the house. You're angry because you see all of it as somewhat of a waste, especially when you get sick. Your kids can't help you. Me as your husband can't help you. Can perhaps make you soup, but you got to do the pain alone. And being alone is very, very tough unless you have a great amount of maturity. And then you regain your health, resentment, and anger. And every time you go out and you see people just on their own, walking by themselves, you envy them. You say, I want to be like that. Every time you pass by a coffee shop and there's a man or a woman sitting and reading a book, let's just say the Bible, you envy them and you become angry at yourself and your life. And something very strange happens deep within. You say to yourself, maybe I should just leave. But this idea, maybe I should leave, just didn't come up. It's been going on for a long, long time without your awareness, behind closed doors maybe. And you say, maybe I should leave because you have lost something and you want to reclaim it. And you see other people as the villains. They are the ones who took those things away from you. And you also realize it was a mistake perhaps for you to get married, for you to have children, for you to be part of society, because society is no good, doesn't offer you much. Chews you up and spits you out, and then you're just completely forgotten. And then there comes a point, and this is like many weeks or months or years pass by, and you knock on the door and say, Amir, we need to talk. Okay? And by this time, our relationship really is no longer like on fire. You know, you do your thing, I do my thing. This is not working out. What's not working out? We are not working out. Well, do you want to go to Costco? I say, being a simpleton man. You want to go on a cruise? What do you want to do? No, I don't want to be with you. Okay, well, just go to your own room. No, I don't think you understand, you say. What? I want a divorce. What did I do? The truth is, I didn't do anything. This is just life. I am one of those things that you have to carry. Life. But you don't want to be part of life anymore. And you don't have to be part of life anymore because it goes all the way back to your childhood, from 0 to about 15 or 16 or 20. You always wanted to live a reflective life. And life steals that particular desire from you. And we try to work things out, but you become more and more angry because I'm pushing you to be in a life you seriously no longer want to be in. And if you've seen the movie Freedom Riders, there comes a time or a moment where I come home and your suitcases are packed. So what is this? Are we going somewhere? Yeah, you're staying here. I'm leaving. What about the kids? I no longer care. They're in college. What the hell? That's it. And that's how ultimately resentment and envy and anger show themselves in a very, very practical container.
So then magnify that by power.
Well, once you realize that you have wasted your life in a marriage and being a mother and this and that, that particular realization takes away a good amount of power. You get depressed, you get angry, you get confused. You try to communicate your feelings or emotions with me, with your therapist, with your friends. Language fails you. And then after 5, 10, 15, 20 years, you rise up. It's kind of like Matrix Revolution. And you walk away from the whole thing. That's a great amount of power that you now have. You don't care about what I think. You don't care about the kids. You don't care about the tables and sofas of our house. You don't care about the house. You don't care about society in general.
You'd be lonely.
Well, that's fine. Remember that idea of being alone, that also is a fiction, a narrative. And you may be able, kind of like the movie Into the Wild, if you've seen it, even though the movie, romanticized the book a little, or maybe a lot, what you have is a kid who just hates everything about society. He's like Soren Kierkegaard, and he consumes the wrong herb. The one that was supposed to save him kills him. And near the end, what you have in the movie, he visualizes his dad, his mom, his sister. And what you have is, yes, I've lived a great life in the wild, but the truth is when you're sick, when you don't have power, when you feel weak, when you need people to be around to take care of you, I have no one. And that's the thing about life, it's this pendulum. You have power, you feel good. You don't have power, you feel weak, and you need other people. In power, you're alone, you're arrogant. And that's a thing about, it's something that Abi asked some days ago about pride, or maybe Kendra asked, or maybe Alexis did. There is nothing wrong with being proud, as long as it doesn't lead you to arrogance. Because the moment you become arrogant, you just become cruel and mean-spirited. But pride by itself, as long as it's tamed, tempered with humility and reflection and wisdom, pride is really, really good. Because if you're honest, if you've sacrificed a good amount of time writing a really, really good essay, and you've had that essay checked or read by 50 professors, and I give you an F, and you take me to the dean's office, you have every right to do so, because it's passed the test by 50, 60 people. You're like a Plato. If on the other hand, you spend 5 minutes on the essay, and you say, oh, it's great, and I give you an F, and you take me to the dean, well, you're just being arrogant. How could you, demand an A when you've only worked 5 minutes? Oh, that was tiring. Oh, yes, and if you have a whole host of women or men who are filled with resentment because life has pushed them in a direction they didn't want to go, now you have a social upheaval, you have a revolution. You have the protests that you see on college campuses. Yeah, Grace.
Circling back to the story that you told about Raphael and TV, that sounded, can you talk about the difference between wants and addictions? The way you described it sounded close to Raphael almost being, not this part, sorry Raphael, almost being addicted to the TV and the idea of being willing to end lengths to get a hold of it. It sounded almost like a Twilight Zone episode, actually.
If you imagine emotions like anger, so one of the components that exists in us is the component called fire. And when something catches on fire, it's all consuming. It destroys everything. So what you have in Raphael and the TV analogy is that he had already created a story. It didn't have much of a life. He just came to class and I'm off for a couple of days, this is what I want to do. And as you begin to imagine that, it grows into a want, and as you play with it some more, intimacy grows, and now it becomes a need. A need is like this fiery passion. I need to have this. It could be an addiction. You could, I suppose, wrongly or rightly say that. It's just very short-lived, because once that particular desire is satisfied, once you have the TV and once you watch TV, after a couple of days, you don't want to be around it anymore. Your eyes are tired, you kind of feel nauseous a little bit, and you feel bad for your body, so you kind of just go for a walk for a long time, and you say, I'm not going to watch TV for a while. The long-term addictions are different in the sense that you've done something over and over and over and over again, and it has given you a good amount of pleasure. It is true that while you're smoking, perhaps, whatever, there are moments where you feel shame and guilt, and you say, well, I don't want to really do this again. But the pleasure principle overrides the negative aspect of it. When you reflect, what if my mom catches me? What if my dad catches me? I shouldn't be doing this, focus on my class. These are short-lived moments. What exists is that you have your friends, you guys are sitting by the estuary, you're smoking, and watching the ducks make out, and it's fun. And you do it every single day. And there is something about smoking which is, or any kind of pleasure, especially if it gives you an intense amount of distraction from the responsibilities avalanched on you by life. When you do something over and over again, it also impacts your physical body. It also impacts the way you think about things, which makes walking away from serious addictions almost an impossibility. So I think, I probably wrong. Again?
Yeah, I guess.
Alexis? Abi? Kendra? I'm sorry? Oh, fragility. Look at me. I wear goggles, I work in the backyard, something hits me in the eye. I'm in pain. I'm walking, some tiny little thing gets into my shoe. I stop myself, take off my shoes, get rid of this tiny little pebble. I have a tiny little insect sitting on me, biting me. I think we're a little bit of both. We have a saying in Persian that human beings are like the petals of a flower. You know, they get wrinkled up really, really quickly. They get broken quickly. But they're also as strong as a rock. That there is something about us that defies the brutalities of life. You know. And, you know, we go back to, there are days where you feel as if you have a good amount of power to withstand the force of life. And there are days it's just too much. And so, and because we're the sort of animals that focus on pain or negativity more often, we don't really remember the moments where we have been strong in life. Yeah, you know, I went through a divorce, and yeah, it was bad. I lived in my car, I was homeless, but look at me now. You know, where sometimes you just wake up and you feel like weeping, and you do. There are days where life is tough and you fight it and you win. You know. So, and I think every stage of life you walk into, you know, from middle age you go to old age, for example, or from adolescent you get to adulthood. You're walking to different territories, and you're walking into a world that has components that you never knew existed. And you just need skills, and you don't have them. And when you fall prey to them, victim to them, when they beat you up, the truth is you have no choice but to feel weak. But as time goes on and you begin to understand it more, you accumulate more tools, and then you can function in them better. It's kind of like, you know, the interview. You go to an interview, and I'm just mostly talking about academic settings. There are like 50 people sitting, and they're asking you all these questions. You feel a little nervous. And then, you get the job, let's just say. And your probationary period is over after either 4 years or 7 years. And then you run into the person who was on the committee, judging you harshly and negatively. And you just give him the middle finger. You were once fragile, but now you understand you have power now. He has no power over you or she. And that's how life is. It's kind of like if I have a lot of unfinished chapters, and if someone tells me I'm going to die in the next few months, well, it's going to bother me a little. I'm going to be angry quite a bit. It's going to make me feel weak and incompetent, fragile in many, many ways. I'm going to just be walking around every aspect of life profoundly angry, and I'm going to beat up people intellectually and emotionally. But there comes a point where, hopefully, I'll be mature enough to accept that's just the way life is. And now I go back to the people I heard and I say, I'm sorry. Or I just simply accept the fact that, well, this has been my life and that's just the way things are. But it took me about 5 or 6 or 10 years to gain enough tools and insights to no longer feel weak, but in fact to feel powerful. There's a story that comes from one of my good friends. His name is Rumi. One day his wife had complained that, look at this house, we don't have anything. No sofas, no chairs, no fridge, no TV. Why don't you go out there and get a job, And Rumi gets up and looks around the house and he says, oh my God, we don't have anything. And he says to his wife, I am following the tradition of Prophet Muhammad, who said, poverty is my pride. That I chose a life of poverty. I'd rather be intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually rich, but physically poor. I don't want to be held hostage by the TV. I don't want to be held hostage by a mortgage. I don't want to be held hostage by a car. I'd rather just have a bicycle because I no longer need to go to Berkeley. I'll just go to Safeway down the street. I have no desire for Berkeley. Or to just watch people just, make a fool of themselves. As Plato would say, that if you want to get a good laugh, there is no reason for you to watch Jerry Seinfeld, even though he's a... let's move on. Yeah, for those of you who may not know, Jerry Seinfeld has been working with Proud Boys and various other groups to beat up the protesters, which is an interesting thing for a comedian. It's also an interesting thing because all of us have biases. All that aside, yeah, that's what Rumi said. Poverty is my pride. Grace, and then Raphael.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, Raphael.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh, I forgot.
Good job.
Why does power feel so lonely? You said power is an answer to anger, which I guess the anger I've had for the music breaking the TV. If I planned well, I saved the money, I meditated, I reflected, not getting angry at the break of the TV. I planned my life and worked hard so that I could have money to face any adversity that could face. I feel like...
Okay, forgive me. The sort of power I think you're talking about is mostly cultural. There is something very, very unique about 21st century depression, 21st century loneliness, the feeling of alienation and meaninglessness. It's something that Viktor Frankl talked about, which is, in his language, logotherapy. That it's not that we don't have money, and it's not that we don't have houses or we don't have cars. It's not even that we don't have people in our lives. The truth is, we don't have meaning. We can't find meaning in money because we don't know what to spend it on that's meaningful. It's not that we don't have people. We have people, we just don't know what to talk to them about. And despite the fact that you have, I mean, this generation of young kids, I am not up to date with the numbers, but in 2007, ages 15 to 18 spent close to $15 billion a year on gadgets. It's never been that in history of the human being. 15 billion. How could like a 15-year-old have so much money to be spending it so casually? You know? And so our problem is not the external. Our problem is there is something about the culture in which we live that makes us very poor on the inside, that we can't. Go ahead.
So we're talking about if I let some anger comes from, the only way I can protect myself from anger is by never letting anyone close to me. Having someone else that's different than me close to me will invite anger. Like I'm talking about love at that point, partnership. Probably no.
If you're like the Buddha, for example, look, if you have lived a very rich, solitary life from the age, say, 10 all the way to about 40, you've had a lot of people around you, but you've spent most of your days on your own, by yourself, reading and thinking and hiking and talking to people. But it's mostly about you. Okay, so at the age of 40, you kind of grow tired of being by yourself all the time. And love just happens. Let's just say you're not the sort of a fellow who are proactive in falling in love. You're passive. Passive in the sense that love happens to you as opposed to you creating it. Okay. Your foundation is the first 30 years of your life. You've never been able to allow intimacy in your life for good reasons. You're much more intimate with books and with people. All right, so now you've grown in love with someone. That's temporary. It doesn't have a very long shelf life. You're going to be responsible. You're going to be very mature. You know, you're going to be very diverse in accepting your companion's desires once in a while. But for the most part, you're going to be alone because that's how you've always been. If you're like my father, on the other hand, who lived a very social and communal life, and you're talking about the Persian culture where individualism, autonomy, these are just absurd and ridiculous terms. These are insulting terms. You don't have bedrooms of your own. You don't have your own bed. You don't have your own jacket. You share everything. And when you go to the mosques, as we did way back then, you know, on Fridays, they would bring these huge platters, and about 10 of us would sit, and we would eat with our hands. The idea, can I have my own plate? How about like a fork or a spoon? None of those existed. So when you live in that particular setting, the idea of you having your own stuff just doesn't mean anything. It doesn't even exist. Okay? So if you, again, like my father, you always need other people. Always. Does that make him weak? In some ways, yes. Does it make him strong? In other ways, yeah. Am I self-sufficient because I've learned to be on my own? Yeah. Am I weak in the sense that I have difficulty forming intimacy? Yeah. That's just the way things are these days. Accept it.
Turn to social science. Everything has different ways of interpreting it.
No, there are no perspectives. Just, yeah, it's finished. Yeah, no good.
Well, if you have a majority of the people who don't have the means to have their own things. Like when I grew up, there was one person on the block who had a ball that we could play a team sport with. So everybody in the neighborhood knew that you had to take care of that ball, otherwise the whole block, that was not going to go well for you. So there seems to be a disconnection from the learning process that goes with that for some percentage of the planet. But then for a large percentage of the planet, much larger percentage of the planet, you have to share in order to survive, and that is how you survive.
It's true.
Otherwise, you will perish.
It's true, yeah.
Yeah.
We have a poem where two people standing in the street and it's cold, they have to share a blanket. And you know what happens when you share a blanket? You cuddle a little, you talk a little. There's intimacy there. You feel visible, cared for. And then these two people eventually become very rich. And they now buy their own blanket. And one sits over there, under his own blanket, the other sits over there under his own blanket. But one of them all of a sudden remembers how they were 50 years ago. So one from that corner screams at the other person, I wish to go back to those moments where both of us were poor, where one blanket would cover both of us. Now I have my own blanket, I am lonely, there's no one to talk to. And it's true. Privilege has a tendency of physical privilege, has a tendency of alienating you.
Yeah, the gated community works both ways.
Yeah, it's true. Are we done? Anas? Are you sure? You want to stay here longer?
Trying to absorb everything you just said. So.
You're a very kind man. Thank you. Well, it's good to see all of you. Thursday or Wednesday will be our last day. So take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.